Several years ago, I was teaching the history of World War II to my high school students when one of them asked me a question. Mr. Ellis, if Germany was so broke at the end of World War I, where did Hitler and the Germans get all of the money to rebuild their country and eventually their war machine? It was not a question that I had a good answer to. Even though I had taught World War I and World War II extensively, I had to tell my class I would get back to them on this. In my research and investigation of the subject, I found some answers that were very disturbing. I already knew that Germany at the end of World War I was broke. The Great War had totally devastated Germany, her allies, her enemies, and all of them wanted restitution in the form of money. The only way that the Germans could pay countries like France that were demanding reparations was to inflate their own money, the German mark. So Germany printed bills that had trillions of marks on them, but were not backed by anything. The result was that Germany's money was so worthless it was better to burn it for warmth rather than to try to spend it. After all, as I found out, it took a wagon full of marks to buy a loaf of bread. So how did Germany so quickly emerge from this mess to become a world power? The money had to come from someplace. This is the premise with which I was going to base my research on. Eventually, the information of what I would find out would shock me, and in the end, it would scare me to death. When Hitler quickly rose to power through his Socialist Party, he began to romance many American businessmen and companies. He portrayed himself as a peacemaker to many very powerful men that wanted to see peace throughout Europe. Many bankers, companies, and politicians in the United States began listening to Hitler because America too was in a depression and was looking for new political ideas. It was not uncommon during the early days of the Fascist Party to see Nazi rallies in American cities. These men, as well as many other international bankers, backed the new Germany in the hopes of gaining fortunes. Hitler's promise to them, "I will unify our great countries and build peace in Europe." Among the American companies that bought into that dream, sponsored, and then developed businesses in Nazi Germany were J.P. Morgan, Guarantee Trust, Chase Manhattan Bank, several Wall Street houses to include Forbes, Standard Oil, DuPont, Dow Chemical, IBM, General Motors, Ford Motors, General Electric, and the list goes on and on. What was particularly painful to me was the fact that my father almost lost his life in the Battle of the Ardennes, also known as the Battle of the Bulge, against the Nazis. When I returned to class the next day, it was hard for me to explain to my students that some of the money that Hitler used to kill millions of people with, as well as start a Second World War, was obtained from American icons and pillars in our business community. Even though I'm a die-hard believer in the American way of life and the free enterprise system, it was a hard pill to swallow. I told my students that in my opinion, it is not having a big business that is dangerous, but rather having a greedy nature. As we pondered the ramifications of my research, a student raised his hand. "Mr. Ellis, do you think there will ever be another Hitler, or that the world will ever again embrace another man like him?" I stood there quietly because I did not have an answer.